Hello, Business Exit Secret Formula. This is David Fisher, and today we've got Charles Barnard, and he's come to join us to go through a real deep conversation about business. So, Charles has been in the world of business coaching, engineering, and a whole lot of other different things throughout his life. This is a real special time, a real special guest that we've got today. But for our listeners, just really listen deeply into some of this. This is years and years of experience, because not only did Charles now currently living in Australia, but he actually came from South Africa. So he's been through all the ups and downs, the ins and outs. So it's not just one playing field from one country. This is multiple countries in multiple different areas. So as we go through this today, this will be a really exciting podcast for all of us. So to start off with, Charles, can you tell us about your background, the journey that led to where you are today in your current business? Or you've had multiple different businesses. You could, wherever you want to start in that question.
Yeah. Thanks, David. That is quite an interesting perspective. And I'll tell you why it's led me to where I am today is it actually started with my father. My father was a business owner, but he was a bad business owner in so much as that he didn't know how to really run a business. Didn't have any help. He didn't have any real ability. Then the 72 OPEC crisis hit and his business went bust. And I have distinct memories of being an 11-year-old boy in a very cold winter's evening, spending it for about 2 weeks in a car because that was where we slept until they could get sorted out because the bank took everything. So that actually left quite a deep scar. Fortunately, I was able to build out and I was reasonably okay. And I got a university bursary loan and I studied engineering because at that stage it was, the only real security is in a big corporate. So that was what I was told and that's what I did. Didn't really sit well with me because I was in a parastatal and I'm more entrepreneurial than that. And what then happened was, okay, still big businesses. I eventually wound up with Coca-Cola and I was doing a lot of stuff inside there. And then I was in that mindset where I was going to resign from Coca-Cola and start my own business in engineering and consulting around that area. When I got a couple of calls actually, all within a half an hour, but one of them wound up with me going to re-establish Coca-Cola in Saudi Arabia after the first Gulf War. So we went up there and I spent some time in Saudi Arabia. And then for my sins, I was transitioned to Bahrain, and my area was Algeria to Pakistan for Coca-Cola. Second Gulf War hits. Hey, insurance agents, companies won't insure us. Coca-Cola retrenched us, went back down to South Africa, did a lot of work across multiple. By that stage, there was no ways that I was going to work for a big corporate anymore. And I was out on my own. I was doing consulting. We built up a business as property developers in South Africa. Really, really good. Did a whole range of things. I did a lot of consulting across Africa. So from Algeria down to Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Sub-Saharan Africa, East, West, you name it. I was in Africa. I was really doing a lot of work in Africa. Then journey happens. We decide that South Africa is not sustainable for us. And we migrated to Perth. The way that I could get into Perth was to buy into a business at that stage. So I bought into a business. I did my due diligence on the business itself. I did not do my due diligence on the owner. Big mistake.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit more there? Because obviously there's many people that are selling and we've got a lineup of people that actually buy businesses. So this little part here, everyone listen very carefully about due diligence. So if you can explain a little bit more on that journey, let's go a little bit deeper on that buying of that business.
Thanks. It was actually quite an interesting perspective because I was looking for something to migrate to Australia, and because of an age constraint, I needed to come in as a business owner. Now, I had a business in South Africa, we were employing it, but it was not transferable. So I needed to buy in something in my skills. My brother's a plumber, and I bought into a plumbing supplies business because, well, I knew a little bit about the industry, knew a little bit about what they were doing in manufacturing. So I could go in and I went through the books and I could see some stuff, and there was a little bit of challenges. By the way, this was immediately before the GFC, the global financial crisis in 2008. And I went in and I did everything around there, but I didn't, and I spoke to some of the customers, the local customers that I could get hold of. And I went in and I looked at the equipment and the machinery, and it was okay. The business infrastructure was okay. But what I didn't do was understand the customer base properly, and didn't realize that the owner was planning, he was selling to resellers who then sold on to other plumbers. What I didn't realize was that he had these plans to try and bypass them back in 2008 and go direct, and by so doing alienating his customer base.
Wow.
All right. So at that stage, I didn't know about it, and he kept it from me. So anyway, we sold up in South Africa. We came across, and this all happened. Then the GFC happened, and I just saw everything going up in smoke. And we took him out, and poor disclosure, inappropriate disclosure, all the other challenges that we had. We had multiple court battles. I won every one over 7 years, but every time there was that little bit of extra little thing that he could escape. One time, his lawyer was too incompetent, so they didn't represent him properly. Things like that came up. And the judge, who was normally a criminal judge, not used to trying commercial affairs, gave him another chance because he wasn't represented properly. Things like that. So those were little escape things. Eventually, he lost everything, and then he declared bankruptcy. And that in turn, more than $1.5 million gone up in smoke. So that led me back into the world of consulting.
Right.
As I say, I'd done my due diligence on the business, had not done it on the owner and what his plans were. He hid strategic plans from me, and I didn't know it.
Reflecting back on that, how do you think, because it's a hard one, isn't it, to actually find that out, how do you think if you did that all over again, and obviously you had a lot of money on the line, how do you think, like our listeners here would get something from, how would they go about actually doing that due diligence actually on the business owner?
So here's where I was lax. I was a member of Rotary, and Rotary has got this process of four-way promise. And it's of the things we think and say and do, is it fair to all concerned? Is it the truth? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And there's a fourth word I can't remember now. But I was a member of Rotary. He was a member of Rotary. I thought there was a code. So my mistake, I did not do the due diligence on him as a person. If I had, I'd have found out that he'd had 4 business partners who all left him in a huff beforehand. I wouldn't have brought in the way that I did as a minor business owner, because the business that we bought into had a turnover of $18 million at the time.
Right. So at that time when you bought the business in Perth, how many years were you actually there in Perth prior to buying it?
I wasn't.
Oh, you weren't. Right. So
that
you didn't.
Was my visa into Australia.
Right. Okay. Right. So so that objective of buying in, you didn't really have the opportunity to get that local knowledge until after the event, did you?
I should have hired some additional search, quite honestly. Admittedly, it was before things like Google and the like, so it would have been a little bit harder for me to do it remotely. These days, maybe there's an opportunity to do it remotely. I don't know. But I definitely should have hired advisors to go into that area.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your lawyers, your business exit advisors, accountants, all of those types of people that are actually on the ground would be what our listeners should be really digging into. So you might come in remotely from somewhere else on the other side of the world, but the lesson here is use the locals that are specialists in their field to do a bit of research, because obviously for the little amount of money that you would have paid them, what it would have been a dot in the ocean.
Yeah, the $5,000, $10,000 that I might have wound up paying, and I'm pushing it out a little bit there, but it would have been compared to the $1.5 million I lost.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah. So, so that's a great point. So if everyone just really spend that money up front, because as you say, if you spent even $20,000 compared to losing $1.5 million and everything else, that's a very, very low percentage, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you think that you know the person, but you think you go on premises around people, and it was a typical assumption, because he was a member of Rotary, because I was a member of Rotary. Hey, he's going to have the same value system.
Yeah.
Assumptions.
And over that period of time of buying, while we're on that subject, how long did it all take from on the first day that you actually started connecting until you actually closed the deal. So, yeah, so going through your due diligence, discussions, everything else from the beginning. What sort of period of time was that?
Because we're doing it remotely and the way it was done took about 6 months from first speaking to him, finding out about the business, to settling in Australia and handing over the money.
Right, okay. Yeah. So that's actually quite quick.
Yeah, but it was done as fast as I possibly could because we wanted to get out of South Africa. So
Yeah.
for us, it was a case of moving out. So at the time, it was quite challenging, and it led to me doing a whole range of why I'm a coach. First, doing life coaching to see what I contributed to it. So I've got a diploma in life coaching. But at the same time, it is why did I go down that route? And that led me to becoming a certified exit planner. And I also did a master of business coaching. A lot of it was around me examining my navel to see how did I contribute to this mess? What did I do that was wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it stood me in good stead. And the way that I look at it now is, hey, really expensive visa fees, but that's the way I've got to look at it.
Yeah, yeah. So as we go, so really your experience or actually coming into it has been firsthand, isn't it? So going from being an engineer, virtually from many parts of the world, to coming in and buying a business, and now you're a business coach and consultant. You've really done it from hard knocks, haven't you?
Well, yes, I've got formal qualifications, but I've got a lot of scars on my back, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So actually tell us about some of those formal qualifications, because I hear even in the business exit world, you've got a few qualifications in that space, not just the engineering.
Okay, so yeah, I've got the engineering degree, mechanical manufacturing focused engineering degree. Then I did an MBA where it was operations and a little bit of finance. And then I'm a registered professional engineer in South Africa, which is not transferable to Australia without a formal vet assessed process, but I'd long past doing that, so haven't bothered doing that in transferring the qualifications to Australia. But I've got a Master of Business Coaching from the University of Wollongong. And a little bit before that, as I said, I got a formal qualification as an exit planner from an organization called Exit Alliance. They no longer exist, unfortunately, but I still use a huge amount of the IP that I learned from them in what I do.
Yes.
Yeah, in what I do. But now these days, because of my own experiences, because of my childhood, I focus on business turnaround because I've got a personal mission where I really want to help entrepreneurs escape entrepreneurial poverty. Because I've seen too many times business owners that are only just going by. They pay their people more than they earn themselves. They are literally living from hand to mouth. Their employees much less so.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen so many times. And because of what was happening with my dad and how that happened, and then my own experiences, I've got this mission where I've got to help business owners escape entrepreneurial poverty. And that's the term that I put it out. They're entrepreneurs, but they're poor.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately, the statistics on that type of thing is, 90% of businesses don't last the first 5 years? Was that something like that?
Yeah, pretty much. It's close to that.
Yeah, because when from our side, we're here to go and prepare the businesses and then optimize the businesses, and then as a business broker, we're actually here to sell them as well.
Yeah.
On that journey, there's those big steps. So really, you're part of the preparation and the optimization phase, because if you don't get from the first stage, just like the foundation, here we are from a background of building and a background of engineering, if the foundation isn't right, then nothing's right, is it?
Very much so. In fact, the way that I see it, if you want to be able to sell your business, you've got to have a consistent, reliable income, a reliable cash flow that is not dependent on the owner's involvement. That last part is really, really critical. If you think about it, if you want to be able to scale your business, it involves you being able to hand down to other people, other systems that can do it and run the business without you. If you're selling the business, it is without you being present. That's a successful sale. So whatever you do, saleable or scalable, scalable equals saleable in my mind. If you have a business that can scale, you have a business that can sell. And a lot of business owners don't make that transition. They think that they are it, they're going to be doing everything. And when they do that, they effectively, all they've done is buy themselves a job or build themselves a job. They've never actually built a business. So what do they have? A job for somebody else?
That's
You're
right.
to buy that? That's all they have if they don't have the ability to step out.
Yeah. So that's a big point, and obviously we have a lot of people that come to us to sell businesses. Unfortunately, 80% we have to say, well, we can sell it, but we have to sell it with you in it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to be attached to it, working in it for nothing, basically, then someone will buy it. But then you're still part of it, and you're virtually going to get paid nothing to be part of that. Of course, everyone says, no, I'm not going to do that. So as you're saying, Charles, it's what do we have to do? We have to build up business that's not dependent on them. So that's a great message for everyone. We have to start building businesses, not building jobs.
Very much so. The way that I look at it is, do you have enough cash to grow? Do you have enough? Because a lot of people will generate cash, and there's a real difference between profit and cash. So do you have a cash to grow? And then do you have the culture and leadership in your teams to sustain that growth? And it's that sustain that growth usually means you're not in the business.
Yeah. And that's an interesting one, which we can go a little bit deeper on that. So like anything, that momentum to get the wheel going, say, for example, like on a car, but then after that, if you don't keep putting fuel in it, then it runs out, doesn't it? So it's virtually the same sort of principle. And so as it takes off, we even get to the point, it's like a rocket, isn't it? How much energy and thrust does that take from the next phase to get it off the ground? Yeah. And that's a big chunk of that. And then to maintain it, you could get off the ground 10 meters and then you've run out of fuel, you're back on the ground, you've fallen over. So to get it through the atmosphere and all the rest of it, that's where all the thrust, the energy, and you can't just rely on one person, can you?
Very definitely not. One of the biggest keys to growth is when you're able to find that mindset to delegate. As an engineer, I was brought up on the theory of constraints, which is really, when you break it down, that the throughput through any system is constrained by the bottleneck. It doesn't matter whether you're building a production line in Coca-Cola, there's always a bottleneck which determines the entire capacity through the business. And that capacity in many, many businesses is limited by the owner because they don't want to delegate. So all they're doing is keeping everything to themselves, and then they're actually limiting the growth of the business. And I see that so often. And the best way to free up capacity for the owner is to be able to expand their capability by giving a lot of their mundane tasks to other people.
So if we go a little deeper on that bottleneck, so we can imagine Coca-Cola, it's obviously got a whole lot of conveyors and we can see literally the bottles coming to a stop. How could we, in a simple terminology, explain that to our listeners today?
All right, so Coca-Cola is actually an interesting, any production line. You always build a production line in a V shape where there's a particular piece of equipment that is the bottleneck and determines the output through it. In a bottling line, it's usually the filling operation. The interesting thing is before that, you've got to maximize throughput through the bottleneck. So you always have a buffer. So you have these buffer conveyors where there's extra stuff going in so that there's always stuff available for the bottleneck. But on the other side, there's always a conveyor which is faster than the bottleneck. So it takes it away so that there's no buildup of stock after the bottleneck.
Yeah.
That way the bottleneck maximizes its production. Now that's a production line. Personal side, I prefer actually using the 80-20 rule. And it's actually something which is quite surprising, but everybody, if you look at the value that you're generating per hour, you're going to find that there's 2,000 hours, or that's 40 by 50 odd weeks, basically, say roughly 2,000 hours that the average person is at work. During those 2,000 hours, there's probably about 1,600 of them where they're doing menial tasks, not really adding value. They're just doing stuff. Those for me are the $10 an hour tasks where not much happens. Then you're going to find stuff where there's They spend probably about another 400 hours, not quite say 200, say about 350 hours, where they really only earning about $100 an hour coming in. Now, the first type of tasks are stuff like sending an email. They are doing stuff which really could be done by somebody else. It's a routine stuff that takes away energy, doesn't do anything, basic admin. It's picking up a telephone and calling a friend rather than doing the actual work that you're supposed to do. You'll find all sorts of things like that. But that takes up such a huge portion of our time. Then there's stuff where you might be doing reports, you might be sending messages on LinkedIn or whatever, but you're adding a little bit of value, but it's only about $100 an hour. Then there's another smaller portion, probably about 80 hours, where you're adding in about $1,000 an hour, where you're actually really focused on delivering something. But then there are those very few hours, probably only about 16, 17 in a full year, 2 days worth, where you're generating around $10,000 an hour. Now, it might sound crazy, but that's where the real value of your business lies, where you're doing big deals, where you're negotiating with big clients, where you're putting the strategies in place that are going to drive the business for the future. Those are the $10,000 hours. The $1,000 hours might be some times where you might be setting up call scripts or setting up some systems in place that will actually generate a lot of other value. Here's where the problem is. Most owners think that they are being really valuable when they're being busy and they're getting into doing those menial tasks because, hey, we've got to do it, we've got to do it, we've got to do it, we've got to do it. But they're not adding value to the business.
No. Well, it's low value tasks, isn't it? So that's even a lot of those tasks today are actually AI-related workflows and other things that are coming into flow, but they can do some of those low tasks. But if we move forward, because obviously we cover a lot different things with AI, but if we start looking at the 10K per hour, less really, those are the nuggets, aren't they?
Those are the absolute nuggets, and they don't happen that often. Our task is to make them happen more often. That's how we actually grow the business. That's how we 10x our business. That's how we really build the future. And that's when you start thinking about, how do I scale this business? What do I need to do to put the systems in place? What's my long-term strategy? How am I going to sell this business? Do I need extra production capability? How am I going to make the business way more saleable? Because that is where you're really, really driving massive growth. We know that if you've got a business that is benchmarks that I've seen, if the business is under $1 million turnover, that basically all you're going to get is what the owner gets as a salary. That's about all that it's worth, if that. If that. When you get to 5 mil, you probably run about a 3 times earnings bit type thing. However, when you get to 10 mil, now you're starting to talk of 7 times earnings. And that really makes a difference. So how do we get to that extra revenue that really drives the valuation of the business? Obviously, with the right profitability. $10 million business with no profits is useless.
So a lot of that I'm just going to reflect back on the 10,000 an hour. We all want to chase those ones, don't we? Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of these things in the world is there's so much noise, right? So the noise pulls us into all of those little low-end tasks, the emails of this, the that, what's going on in the world's coming to an end or whatever the situation is, and we get sort of down that line. But our focus is in the wrong spot, isn't it? So you're not going to come those $10,000 deals as something. You're going to have to be very focused, isn't it? So if you've got more time would be the key to this, isn't it? If you've got more time set aside to think of the big deals, which you mightn't know today, but if you spend no time even putting them on the table to try them out or to have some strategic partners or reach out to people, it's never going to come to life, is it?
No, how do we get there? That's probably the next question I'm talking about, okay?
Yes.
So here's something that I do for myself. I have what I call champagne planning. So every Saturday morning, I plan the week ahead.
Brilliant. There you go. That's a nugget, everyone. Just listen to that. Plan the week, on the Saturday.
Yeah. I plan, and I do it as a special type of thing. You can actually do it generally, but I found that making it special helps elevate it. But here's something else that is perhaps the real nugget in it. I look at what is the one thing that if I got it done would really be worthwhile cracking a bottle of champagne. That's how
Right.
I
The
call it like that.
reward. The reward.
Yeah, so if I got it right, hey, that's worth, there's the champagne worth it. So that's my champagne moment. Now I then work backwards. What do I have to do to be able to make that happen? And then I schedule that in before I schedule my busy tasks in. And
Right.
here's the
Yep.
other thing is that I do my utmost to schedule it in the first 2 days of the week, the Monday or the Tuesday, because I find that life happens. Wednesday and Thursday go to custard, and Friday is toast anyway. So if I don't have it done in the Monday or Tuesday, I usually miss it.
Yep.
So for
Yep.
me, getting it done early is a real key. And then you know what? Doesn't matter what's happened for the rest of the week. I've actually won the week because I've earned my bottle of champagne.
Wow. So that would be a definite nugget, a definite lesson in this
Mm,
podcast. If you take nothing away from it, think of the champagne. Because if you don't reward yourself as well, it's
mm.
virtually like, we all heard about the funnel, right? You're virtually like turning the funnel upside down, starting with those top things and then filtering your way down as the week softens. So on the Monday and Tuesday, you're virtually at the head of the funnel as you're working your way down if you turned it upside down. While most people are starting from the top and they're filtering their way, hopefully to get to the big task at the bottom and never happen.
Yeah, exactly. So I've just found that if you can set up that real thing, and it's got to be something that's worthwhile that you can crack the champagne. So what I will do is I'll go through the planning. I'll say, this is what I want to achieve. We run through it. And then I also do a risk mitigation. What's going to stop me from getting there? Is there something that's likely to stop me? How can I minimize the impact of that? I do all that. And then if I've done everything and I've scheduled it, I look at my calendar again and then I ask myself, really, if I really achieved what I said I would, is it worth opening a bottle of champagne? Or I don't necessarily drink it, but or whatever is the case that I'd have as a celebration. If the answer is no, then I haven't got my champagne moment and I've got to start again. It might be a big
Right.
rock, but it might not be the rock that I need to achieve.
So that's a bit like turning that wheel again, where it's not.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say even the 1% works, doesn't it? Where if you work on the 1% a day, look at how many days. That's a big percentage, isn't it? So it's
Yeah.
virtually the same thing, but you're just breaking down into a module of a week.
Yeah, I'm breaking it down into a week. What can I get done in this week that is really worth my efforts? And then
Yeah.
then I know that I win. Then it doesn't matter what the busyness brings, because if I've done that, I know I've moved my business forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. Yeah. So just think of that as you go about your business. And like you say, you can write that on a sheet. We've actually got ours. I'll pull it out. Actually, write ours down here like this, and it's pretty much written up. So we do have it on Asana and all the rest of it, but I actually just write it out because there's actually something magical about the whole concept of touching it. I don't know. But if you actually see it and you can write notes on it as you're going, it's far more tangible sitting there, and it's in an A3 copy. So it's very distinctive, and there's boxes to tick because there's
Yeah.
dates beside it. So what we actually do in our case, we actually do it like a 90-day one. That's a good start. So if everyone starts with a 7, and then they can build from there, isn't it?
Yeah. So your 90 days, I take it as a 12-week year. So
Okay, yep.
yeah, so instead of a 12-month year, let's do it as a 12-week year. So what would normally take me a week or a year can I achieve in 90 days? And then I
Right.
break that down into the weeks, and that's what forms the crux of my weekly sprint, if you want. So I'm doing 12 times weekly sprints to actually achieve my quarter. And then that 13th week is either celebration or a catch up. It's
Yeah,
my fun.
brilliant. Yep. So same thing. Listen to that. See how
Yeah.
you can break that down. So it's pretty much the same, isn't it? You know, when back in school you used to have assignments and you'd wait for the last night or two to do them, but you had 2-3 weeks to go, and actually I'd do it and you leave it to the last minute. This is pretty well exactly the same, isn't it? Like if someone says you've got 3 months to do something, you're going to leave it to the last week or two to even start, probably.
Unfortunately, that's very, very true. There's more than enough research that shows that most people won't start until they're at least halfway through the period. So unless you set some real milestones and you check in on those milestones, people aren't going to achieve what they say they would do. And that's a real lesson for delegation as well. If you are delegating tasks, and this is obviously sometimes that many business owners have real difficulty doing, is in delegating. If you're going to delegate a task to somebody, you have to set milestones, and then don't you set it that you've got to contact them. Rather, you set it that your staff has to put their time in your diary with their milestones, but then you've got to hold them to it. You'll find that if you have a milestone that is set, say if you've got a task that's going to take a month or a project that's going to take a month, you set 2 or 3 milestones during that's equally spaced, and they have to reach targets at those milestones. You'll find that your progress will accelerate. It's easier to delegate because you can then correct course, and you can also build much more trust in the people that they know what they're doing as much as you know what they're doing. So you don't get disappointment, because the last thing you want to do is micromanage, or at the other end of the scale, abdicate. And if you're setting milestones where you can check, let them do what they need to do. You're delegating the outcome. Let them do what they need to do, but you check that they're on track. That's what you need to do for proper delegation.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And like I say, the milestones are those steps. Like walking up a set of stairs, where are you going to be? Are you going to be on the 3rd step? You say you're going to be on the 3rd step, but you haven't got there. You're still on step 1. There's no point waiting to 90 days down the track where you should be up on step 10 and you're still on step 1. There's no support in that, is there?
No, nothing at all. As you say, if you're going to climb the 10 steps, you want to say, okay, I'm going to be on, or 10 flights of steps, let's put it that way. Then you can actually have the landings. So you can say, I want you to be on 3rd floor, 6th floor, 9th floor, and then the final push. Maybe,
across the line.
Yeah.
So just think of it as our listeners, as you are the leader in your business, think about those flight of steps. I'm, as you know, very big on analogies, but it's no point in waiting to the 10th floor on the 10th landing, expecting all these things if your team hasn't even got to the first landing. So, and that's where sometimes a task might be, or a project might be just too large and they need a little bit of assistance, or the expectations might be a little bit great. There's a whole lot of combination of things, or they just need some extra support just to get it across the line. So just think of all of those types of things as you're setting these tasks for, and even as you start delegating out or moving out, on the word of exiting, those sort of tasks that you're only looking from a bird's eye view. You're just coming in and then looking at when they turn up at the landing, instead of micromanaging them walking up the stairs. That would be a good point, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and if you are looking, let's actually come back to the core premise of the podcast. It's around exit. If you are setting up an exit strategy, there are a couple of things that you've got to take a look at. What is your 10th floor? What does that look like for you? Because if you don't know what the 10th floor is, you're never going to actually be able to set the milestones to get there. And the 10th floor has to have you in it in a different context. So what do I mean by that? A lot of people that I've seen, if they're business owners and they sell the business, they have real difficulty letting go because they don't know what they themselves are going to do after business. And their identity is so tied up into the business that they're not actually ready for the change. And when it does happen, it comes forced on them. There's a shock to the system. And unfortunately, a lot of business owners then lose identity and don't know what to do. And it's much like people used to be the case of that they'd work, they'd retire, and then 6 months later they would die because they didn't know what they were doing. But if they kept on working, they kept on living. In a business context, if we don't know what we're going to be doing after business, we'll be very much like that owner who retires and then doesn't, or the worker who retires, doesn't know what he's doing, loses identity, falls down. You have to have a set of objectives. You have to have clarity in your mind of what your 10th floor looks like after business. If you don't do that, you won't have a successful transition.
Exactly. And that's why the sponsors of the show is Business Exit and Beyond. And you've got the exit part, but the beyond part, well, I'm really pleased you brought that up, Charles, because the beyond part is that what are you going to transition to? And you were talking about mission, and obviously we got our mission to help business owners prepare, to optimize, and to obviously sell. And then the next part of that is what you do is prepare, optimize, and pretty much what you're going to do beyond. So it actually flows through because you have to go through the 3 stages. So if you had a couple of little tips on that, because that's a very broad subject, and it's even like myself, I've probably the reason why we're doing what we're doing, because my background's 45 years of construction. So I've actually transitioned into this world now, helping business owners go through those stages. Mm-hmm. It's possible for anyone to do this transition, isn't it?
Yeah, David, obviously we're of a slightly different generation to some of the people that will be listening into this show. But I'm 65. I'm about to turn 65 next month. And I've decided that I need to understand what the next 15 years bring and how can I be of more contribution in the next 15 years than I ever was in my entire lifetime. So I see that I've got something that I've set my own life over the next year into 3-5 plans. And if I can achieve them, fantastic. But it's a way of transitioning from me so I can provide something for other people. So I've already said, hey, what I've done up to now has been great, but here's my next phase of life. And this is what my next phase of life is. And it's pulling me like crazy. I want to be able to do it. And so for business owners who are thinking of exit, if you really want to do it, what do you want to do beyond business? That is so, so critical. Set up some targets, set up your life plan. And that sounds crazy, but it doesn't have to be hard either. You can actually have something. You will get bored playing golf, no question about it. People will play golf and then they will eventually say, I can't play anymore. I don't want to spend my time on the course. What else can I do? So set up something for yourself to do. How can you contribute? How can you mentor others? How can you grow your life beyond what it has been? How can it be an even bigger chapter in your life than what it was before? So ask yourself those sort of questions.
So when you think of it, we've all had so much knowledge that we've gained over all of these years. We've gone on a journey of understanding that knowledge, because it's one thing to have knowledge, and then we've gained all this wisdom. So we're actually at the prime point when you were saying about passing that on by coaching or mentoring others. This is a perfect time for people to then go through that transition where they don't have to do it full time. The typical example, they could do it twice a week. They could connect in with other people, and people like Charles, he has groups, we have groups. We can connect you up with people where everyone's looking for these wise men and women that can actually contribute to the next generation where they can help them, isn't there?
You know, there's the concept that there's ageism in Australia. I find that ageism is actually our frame of mind. Because if we want to contribute, we can. We just have to find out the ways to do it. So for me, if you see up top there on my corner, there's a book there. So I've written that book as a way of contributing. It's all my case studies, a huge amount of the tools that I use in my business turnarounds, written up as a novel. Why have I done it as a novel? Because I think that story is the way that we pass on history. And so I've written it as a story, as a fable, but it's got all the tools and wisdom that I know to be able to pass on. And that's what I think that, how do we do that in others? How do we find ways to pass our knowledge to others in a way that they will find useful? Then we'll find that there isn't ageism. It's our mindset.
Yeah, well said, well said. And talking about that book, I hear that it's coming out on my birthday. So I'm a little bit younger, but on the 26th of August, I'll be 63 years old. And tell us the name of the book and what we can do to actually get this book. And we'll put some links and what we need to do underneath, obviously, this podcast. And we'll promote this book out there as well. But if you could just give us a little bit of a rundown on the book, not to dig a deep detail. No. That would be really great.
So the book is actually based on a series of case studies that I've got. It's a family. It's called Forged, a family, a fabrication, a fight for the future. It's going to be released on Amazon. It is actually set around this family that runs a duct fabrication shop. They have some challenges. There hasn't been investment in the business. The equipment's old. They're losing clientele because the children that are supposed to inherit the business haven't been taught how to run a business. And that's a problem that I find very often. It's a migrant family because I often find that migrant families, the owner's going to be running it and the children are expected to get into the business. But they're often taught to be operators in the business, not owners of the business. And they're not taught business tools. So they find that when suddenly dad isn't there, they're floundering. And I'm saying dad because it's usually dad. 99% of the time, it's dad.
Yeah.
but the children are floundering. So that's the case in this book. So then they have this guy who comes in. It's written as a novel, as I said, along the lines of E-Myth or Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Even if I say so myself, I've had some really good feedback. One of my the initial reviewers said he was giggling. Somebody else was complaining that her children kept on interrupting her and reading the book, so she didn't know where she was. Things that she had to go back and find it, so she was getting frustrated with it because the children were taking it on to read it. Yeah, right. So those are things. A friend of mine who was in South Africa says he wishes he had that knowledge, that I had that knowledge when he was running his dad's business back in South Africa in the 90s, because that went bang. Yeah. So there's a lot of knowledge, but it's also written in a way that people can get into it as a standalone story.
To get the understanding, because there's a lot of books out there, very good books, don't get me wrong, but some of them are a little bit, I say, above the understanding. So you've made it in a context that people can understand.
Yeah, there's a problem with the bank manager. There's a problem with the ATO. Okay. And I've had both of those inside there. The client equipment is aging, falling apart, needs reinvestment. They don't have their marketing sorted out. They're not doing the real tasks. They haven't defined their proper customer, their ideal customers, or going after it. So those are things that we addressed in the book as ways, and the tools are explained. So even what I was talking about earlier on about that 80-20, I've got a little table inside there which actually describes the types of job that are $10, $100, $1,000. $10,000.
That's brilliant. Everyone, we'll, like I say, we will promote this book. So we'll link that even into, because we don't have any links at this present moment, but we will soon. And even in our show notes, we'll put that, and then we'll promote that, because this is something that every business owner, well, not say everyone, but you probably got 80%. So we know that 80% are not sellable. How can they start preparing that? And for us, it's about, don't wait now. It's like the scenario of when do you plant a tree 20 years ago, but you have to start now. Yeah. But this is going to take time. And if you can use Charles's book for what I call the stepping stones going up that landing, up to this, up to the 10th floor, you want to use it because it's broken down into bite-sized pieces that people can understand. So it will be out there very soon on my birthday on the 26th. So that could be a champagne moment, couldn't it?
Well, that is my champagne moment, because that, as I say, that's part of my transition into my next several years. So part of what I see myself coming through is being able to transform some of the knowledge and experience that I've had into lessons that other people may take up. And the best way I know it is not to write a boring business book, but to write it in an engaging narrative story.
Yep. So this has been a fantastic time, Charles.
Yeah, thank you, David.
For our business exit secret formula. So there's a whole lot of secrets that have popped out there. So really, you might have to listen to this podcast a few times to really get into that. But there are the notes that will come with it, so you can dig into the little deep parts of that. And like I say, the book will be coming out soon, and we'll be promoting that as well. And I thank you very much for your time, and thank you for our viewers. All of our details will be below in the show notes that connect to all of what we've talked about. So thank you, and from David and Charles.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great champagne week.
Well done.